Everyone. In this video lesson, we will be talking about chapter 4.5 in your workbook, percent problems. Okay, so in this lesson, there are things that you need to take note. So if you can encounter these words, what value, what number, what percent, you can replace them with X or any letter. Okay, so in math, a letter could represent any number. So usually we use X. So there's our, again, you can also use other variable for the unknown value. So it could be X, Y, Z, or any letter or any letters. And then if you encounter the word is, that means that equal to or equals to something. So by operation, is something that is equated to something. And then if you have of, so usually the word of pertains to a multiplication operation. And last thing is percent. So in this discussion, the percent that we get is actually in decimal or fraction notation. So it's in decimal form. So remember that you can express your percent as a decimal or vice versa. Okay. So the general equation that we'll be using if we're gonna encounter percent problems is given by you have a certain amount is equivalent to percent multiplied to the base. So amount, if you're solving for that amount, it's actually you're talking about the part of the base. So whatever is that base pertains to. Then percent, in this case, percent in decimal. So this is in decimal form. And the base, you can think of the base as the whole object. So if you're talking particular, this is 100, so you're taking the percentage of that 100, the base. If you're going to multiply them, it will give you that particular part of that whole thing of that 100. Or you can use what we call the percent triangle. So percent triangle is very useful when you have in your equation that involves three quantities. So the lower left of your triangle in this portion here would be your percent. So this is the percent in decimal. Okay, so this is percent in decimal, and then the upper part of your triangle would be your amount, and then the lower right would be the base. So think of this as the compartment of whatever the value. So if you know the amount, you place it on the top. If you know the base, you place it at the bottom right. If you know the percent, but make sure that it is in decimal. And again, it should be percent in decimal. It's very specific. Okay, so later on I'm gonna show you how to use this percent triangle here. Okay, so again, if this equation at the left is just the same thing as this percent triangle. So again, let's do two column notes. Again, a third of your line paper or bond paper or any paper, try to draw a vertical line wherein at the left would be your questions, the solutions would be the other 2/3 of your space. So let's take example 1. So let's say the question is, what is 30% of 80? So what is 30% of 80? So if you're given the percentage in that form, the first thing that you're gonna do is you try to convert your percent to decimal. So that's the first thing that you do. Convert percent to decimal. So we know in our previous discussion that there are two ways of doing this one. It's either dividing this by 100 because 30%, the percent means over 100. So if I gonna do that, this would give me 30 over 100. So again, the percentage, remember, just the same thing as out of 100. So 30 divided by 100 will just give you 0.3. Or you can do the place, uh, moving the decimal place. The decimal place here is here after the 0. So if I'm gonna do that, you have 30, then you move two decimal places to the left, 1, 2. So now the decimal place is changed to before your 3. So that becomes 0.3. So if you can see, it gives you the same answer, 0.3. So 30% is just 0.3. So the next thing that you do is use the percent triangle. So use percent triangle. And plug in the known and unknown. So again, I'm gonna use my triangle. So if I just gonna copy that one out, again, this part here is percent in decimal. Here would be my amount, and then the lower right is the base. So I'm gonna plug in my values. So percent in decimal, I've given that. That is 0.3. 0.3 is just the same thing as 0.30. And then, am I given the amount? Well, remember, what is 30% of 80? So that means that the whole part or the whole object is 80. So that would be my base. 80 is my base. And then the unknown in this case is the amount. So I'm gonna use X for that. So if you can see, X is in the upper part because I'm looking for the amount, and 80 is the base. So 80 is the base. The percent in decimal is 0.3, and the amount is the unknown, so which is X. So how would I solve for X? So in this case, now the next step would be solve for X. So what would you do? Well, to use the percent triangle, you just cover the upper part, since X, the unknown, or the one that I want to solve, is the upper part of this triangle. So I'm gonna cover that one out. So that means that yeah, I'm gonna use a a paper or what. If you're gonna cover the upper part, what is left is the two numbers 0.3 and 80. So covering X would give me, since both are at the bottom, the operation between them should be multiplication. So you'll get 0.3 multiplied by 80. So both are at the bottom, so the operation is multiplication. So you multiply 0.3 and 80. So if you're gonna do that, 0.3 times 80 will give you 24. So therefore, you would say, so for your final answer, therefore 30% of 80 is 24. Okay. So let's move on to second example. So example 2. 30 is 40% of what number? Okay. So again, I'm gonna do the same thing. Since percentage is given, I'm gonna convert it to decimal. So again, it's either 40 over 100. Percent means out of 100, so that gives me 0.4 or 0.40. That is just the same thing. Or what I can do is 40, move the percent. I'm gonna move two decimal places to the left, so that gives me 0.40. So that should give me the same thing. Okay. So now I'm gonna make use of my triangle. So make sure to identify the amount and the base correctly. So in this case, uh, I'll get that my percent in decimal. So take note that it should be in decimal. This is 0.4. Okay. And then 30 is 40% of what number? So if you have that question, what number, you're talking about the base or the whole part. So again, remember the base is located at the lower right. So therefore, I can use X for that. Then 30 would therefore be the part. Okay, so 30 is the part. So now, how would I write the equation of this? Well, is it not that the variable x is in the lower right portion? So if you're going to cover that part, you'll get 30 above, and then the bottom is 0.4. So that operation is the same thing as division, or you will get 30 all over 0.4. So again, 30 is the top portion, and then zero point 0.4 is the lower part. So therefore you have 30 over 0.4, or that is just the same thing as 30 divided by 0.4. So using the percent triangle, if you can see, that one is if the one you have a known value on top and a known value at the bottom, the operation there is division. So therefore, this horizontal line would pertain a division operation. So for that percent triangle, again, right away you have 30 over 0.4, or 30 divided by 0.4. So if you're going to divide 30 by 0.4, that gives you 75. So therefore you would say 30 is 40% of 75. That means that 40% of 75 is 30. Okay, so let's take example 3. So let's say 50 is what percent? What percent of 80? So in this case, percent is the question mark. So that is my unknown. So going back to my percent triangle, so right away, percent is the question mark. So therefore, I can assign that one by an unknown. Again, any letter would do. Just try to be consistent. I'll just use X. So that is unknown. And I have two numbers here, the 50 and the 80. Okay. So 50 is what percent of 80? So is it not that the base in this case would be 80? So 80. So that's my base in this case. And then 50 is the part. Because if you're gonna remember, percent of 80 means that you're taking the part of that whole thing, which is 80. So therefore 50 is the amount, or the part, the portion of 80. So in this case, if you can see, X is located in the lower left. So again, to get the equation out of that, you just try to cover the lower left. So if you can see, you have 50 on top and then 80 at the bottom. So same thing as before, that tells us that the operation is division because 50 and 80 are separated with this horizontal line. That horizontal line. Or again, that is just the same thing as 50 divided by 80. So what is 50 divided by 80? That gives you 0.625. Okay, so you can use your calculator or you do long division. Well, if I gonna solve that one out at the side, what is 50 over 80 is just 5 over 8, or just 5 divided by 8. So if I gonna use long division, that means that this is 5, and then my divisor is 8, so my dividend is 5. So if you can remember, my dividend is bigger compared to my divisor, so I would expect that my answer is less than 1, or a decimal value. So my decimal place here is somewhere here. So that's 0, 0, 5, and then I bring down 5 here, 0 mean, and then bring down the 0. So now you have, this becomes my sort of a new dividend. So 50 divided by 8, that would be 6. 6 times 8 is 48 all over, well, now I'm gonna subtract. So that gives me 2. And then I'm gonna add more 0. So bring down the 0. Gives me 20. 20 divided by 8 is 2. So 2 times 8 is 16. And then I'm gonna subtract again. That's 4. So if I'm gonna continue my division, I'm gonna add another 0. And that's 40 divided by 8. That gives me 5. So it gives me 0.625. But this is percent in decimal. So remember that always, if you're going to use this percent triangle, that gives you percent in decimal. So you need to convert. So convert to percent. So if you're going to convert that one to percent, if you can remember, we just have to multiply it by 100%, right? So 0.625, just multiply that one by 100%. So if I gonna multiply that by 100%, x therefore is equivalent to 62.5%. So now my answer is in percent. So therefore, I would say that 50 is 62.5% of 80. So if you're gonna check, 62.5 times 80 will give you 50. Okay. So again, if you have any questions, just feel free to email me, and later on I'll be posting also your assignment. That's all for this lesson, and have a great day.